Good evening, I'm Jim Whaley. Tonight is a great pleasure to welcome to Cinema Showcase a man who has become known as one of our most popular and best actors, Mr. Sylvester Stallone. Not only one of our best actors, but also a writer and director of note. His latest film is Rocky III, in which he continues the adventures of a man who has become a popular folk hero. We'll have scenes from Rocky III to show you, so join me as I talk with Sylvester Stallone tonight on Cinema Showcase. Thank you very much for joining Cinema Showcase, and join me right now in welcoming Sylvester Stallone. Thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure.
I mentioned in the intro that Rocky has actually become a popular folk hero. When this whole thing began, did you envision not just the success of Rocky, but the phenomenon that he became?
No, not on either score. I thought that Rocky would appeal to a certain segment of, you might say, urban inner city dwellers. And I thought perhaps at best financially that it would break even. Matter of fact, the studios, when they made it, they thought that Rocky was being designed primarily for second billing and drive-in movies. It was made as a Bill B film. It was not supposed to be billed as anything other. So the whole thing kind of like is like an experiment that got out of control in a biology lab. It just kept bubbling over.
That's incredible. You had, I know, enormous trouble originally in selling the concept, didn't you?
Yes, it really, because it's ground that hadn't been broken. I went around from studio to studio with other scripts, and I had this idea, and I wrote the idea of Rocky, but it wasn't an optimistic script. I wrote it kind of for myself, and it was very pessimistic and very down, because I was feeling down and negative about myself and my life in general. So the script that I had written certainly wouldn't have sold. Then I went to the Chuck Wepner fight with Ali, fighting him. I said, this is a much better ending. Instead of the man taking a dive like he had in my script, let's let him go the distance. Let him fight for something besides money, for human dignity. A man who goes from a total selfless shell to being an existing human form, I am kind of a thing. So I took my dilemma, that was my inability to be recognized as a performer, put it into boxing shorts, and got very, very lucky.
You know, I know there's such things as fortuitous casting, but it almost seems in watching the original Rocky film and the subsequent films that you wrote those characters with Talia Shire, Burgess Meredith, Carl Weathers in mind, because they fit them, not just yourself, of course, but they fit them so perfectly. It
was a miracle. It's all the actors that were originally hired, when they were intended to be hired, fell out. Carrie Snodgrass, Lee J. Cobb, Harvey Keitel, Susan Sarandon. I mean, it was incredible. They just kept falling out. It was like fate was saying, wait a minute, we've got one more person for you to see. And Carl Weathers came in, last one at the end of a long day. It was 8 o'clock at night. Talia came in. She was reluctant. Her husband almost had to drag her in. Burt Young, it was strange. Burgess Meredith came in and auditioned. And I mean, can you imagine him reading after 50 years in the business? I didn't ask him to, but he did. So it just seemed that it was predestined in a lot of ways, because I really have become quite philosophical about the whole thing. I can't take credit anymore. That's when my troubles began originally. You try to figure out how things like that happen, and it's just something that if you could only put a label on it, you'd be the richest man in the world.
Yeah.
It's like an accident.
Yeah.
A wonderful accident.
Luck, I guess.
Luck.
Yeah. You know, I think one of all the wonderful things that have been said about the original Rocky film, to me, one of the best, and that's because I admire the man so tremendously, as does just about everybody, I suppose, is that Frank Capra said Rocky is a film he wished he had made. I don't know if you're aware of that or not. But,
no.
That to me is kind of an ultimate compliment.
What can you say? He had that similar philosophy where he tried to elevate the spirit of man rather than subjugate it and just say, okay, we're all doomed, so let's get it while we can and leave nothing for anyone else. Who cares? And that's a very easy prescription to life to adhere to, but I can't. I can't. And I've been put down for it many times as being this American dream, believer in this, that we can overcome the odds, but I did it. A lot of people have done it. You're doing what you probably want to do. I mean, the fact that so many people are in jobs that they have started out in an ambitious way and they've achieved it. So the American dream does exist. It's just in Hollywood, it doesn't seem to be trendy at the moment.
How much of a problem is it? Because we read so much about the incredible deals that are made, that are unmade in Hollywood, and we know the problems you went through in getting Rocky off the ground. How difficult is it for the filmmaker or someone like yourself who is trying to get a project started to actually get it going?
Oh, it's plenty hard. I mean, hard. Opportunities are there. It's just the route that one has to take sometimes seems like Marco Polo's trip was a weekend excursion compared to the travels that they must go through. The young people that come out of film school, let's say, that want to be directors, usually have to take quite a subservient role and work their way up the ladder as if they were a page boy in a large corporation. One day they wanted to be chairman of the board. Very, very, very rarely do you go into your intended occupation automatically because it's so limited. But I think that's turning around. With the coming of age of cable television and the unlimited possibilities, I think that the TV itself is a voracious, insatiable consumer of films, which I think will open itself up to such a variety and such a army, just a whole new legion of directors and performers and actors and writers, that I think it'll be this whole new Renaissance period. That's
one thing I admire, though, about filmmakers such as yourself, is that when you make a film, it doesn't seem so much like a prepackaged deal as it does people who are so right for what they want to do. Now, that's one of the things I've really gotten tired of in Hollywood in the last 10 or 15 years. Everything seems to be an international deal.
Oh.
You know, you get star A from England, star B from Italy,
yes,
etc.
Yes. Oh, the packaging, yes.
Yeah.
The packaging. Yeah. As much as I'd like to say art is done for art's sake and you'd like to take your film and hang it in the Louvre, it doesn't seem to work that way, because above all else, it is a dollars and cents cash and carry business. And every now and then something emotional or touching or artistic comes out of it, because they do have to cover this incredible overhead. For example, Rocky 1, here is bookkeeping 101, here it comes. Rocky 1 was done for $860,000. Now, if I were to walk in, and I was paid I cleared about $620 a week. If I were to walk in today with Rocky, it most likely would cost about $8.5, $9 million. Now, a man sitting behind a desk, seeing a beefy Italian in a sweatshirt with a broken down Oldsmobile and this ratty script with coffee stains all over it, saying, "Can I have $9.5 million, $8.5 million?" I doubt I would have ever landed anywhere but on the pavement, with
the
his
odds
foot on
would
my
have been
butt.
against
Oh yeah,
you,
I would have
yes.
been kicked down the steps, because it's very, very limited. So people say, how do you do it? I'll do it the same way. No, I think you have to discover different routes now. Today they call it creative financing. It's like,
whatever that means.
10 elephants and $50,000. I mean, there's so many ways you package it. I'll give you a farm in Nebraska and $10.
Yeah.
Will you do it? I said, I'll think about it.
All right, following up such a successful film as Rocky with Rocky 2, I know you must have thought about the sequel syndrome.
Yes, yes.
What did you try to do to overcome that, which I think you have done, and certainly in the third film, which to me, and I don't mind telling you this, I think is probably the best film in the Rocky series. To me, it's the best one. But how did you overcome that sequel syndrome that so many people worry about?
Rocky was designed as a trilogy. The way I interpret sequel is a film that maintains the same central hub character. Let's use James Bond, for example, or Superman. But the satellite characters all change, the girls change, the island change, or whatever city they're shooting it in. Rocky remains a boxer, remains married to the same woman, and the locations are pretty much the same. So what it is basically is a very long-form movie, almost like long-form television, cut up into 3 pieces. It was designed as a trilogy. A sequel is designed, I guess, you can go anywhere you want with it. So when I was approached with the offer to do Rocky III, I wouldn't do it until I had a story, and that story became somewhat autobiographical. I had to live through some of those experiences. Now, with Rocky III, they also wanted to add a name to it, like Rocky's Greatest Challenge,
Yeah.
Rocky's No Marshmallow, or The Final Gong, or,
Right.
you know, Bullets
Something
and
more
Bruises or something. And I said, no, 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 we have to remain true to form. It's 1, 2, and 3, just like the Dos Passos trilogy, USA, or James T. Farrell. Let's keep it simple, let's keep it honest, and hopefully the material will carry itself. Otherwise, we can't gimmick it up. Already, people are going to go in there with a chip on their shoulder. I expected it. I didn't expect any very, very good reviews at all. And that's the truth. I'm not trying to garner any sympathy. I'm just, it really is the kind of thing that I was skeptical of, much less a stranger. I said, can you do it? Like, I won't say, but a lot of people said, come on, what is the reason you're making this film? Greed, right? I said, thank you very much. Would you like to come over to my house for dinner? You're really a wonderful person. Why don't you flatter me and do a crooked mouth routine, too?
I kind of like the title Bullets and Bruises. I think maybe for a future one that you might
Right.
Okay, for those people
Plot's my name.
who have not seen Rocky III yet, the character of Rocky Balboa has undergone quite a few changes since the second film. Could you kind of bring them up to date on where he is as this film starts?
Okay, at this point where the film begins, 3 years have passed. He has maintained the championship. Anyone who is the heavyweight championship has the championship of the world really has intro to any strata of society. He can go into the White House. Internationally, he's well known. So Rocky becomes a spokesman for products. He becomes a spokesperson for every charitable organization in the world. He does everything except box very often. And when he does box, they're usually over in 2 or 3 rounds. It seems as though his life has been taken out of his hands and he's become a celebrity. And the clothing changes, his attitude changes. As a matter of fact, the weight, I'm about 40 pounds different in it, 38 to 40, because I felt that he would also be tailored to fit a certain image. Madison Avenue, like if Madison Avenue were to train a fighter or to build a fighter, this is what they would do. And then along comes a very aggressive, hungry fighter named Clubber Lang, who wants his fair share. He wants his opportunity. He's not willing to let it pass by. And Rocky has been avoiding these issues. He's just letting his manager pick and choose his friends and pick and choose his fights. Well, he's finally forced into this fight, and he thinks it's just another easy fight, and he has a rude awakening. And it's his fall from grace, the re-education, what I call getting back to the eye of the tiger. I mean, he developed the eye of the pussycat. Everything was nice and peaceful and fluffy.
Yeah.
And then he realizes his whole world collapses around him, and money and the prestige was all meaningless. Because when you really clear it all away, the one thing that you have to stand alone with is your fear. And if you can't take your fear and put it into a box and keep it locked and contained, you never get rid of it, but contain it, it eventually will consume you the way a gasoline fire would. So it's Rocky's re-education, and he does it through example and a lot of hard work, and it's like a rebirth. It's kind of like the second coming of a man in his life. So in the Rocky III trilogy, he's gone the full circle. At least I hope he goes the full circle.
We have a clip from the film that I want to run right now, and this features yourself and Talia Shire. What should we know about this
Well, this is,
scene?
he has come to California to train with Apollo Creed to fight this new nemesis, and he quit. He's been working out with just totally lacklusterly, and he is about ready to just pack it all in and doesn't care anymore. And people, we don't know why. What is it? What is it? And she finally says that you have to take stock in yourself, because when it's all said and done, we have to live together. So what is it? How do you handle it? And this is pretty much what
All
it's
right,
about.
let's take a look at that right now. Here's a scene from the MGM UA release, Rocky III.
And you have no right to feel guilty for what happened. You don't! You were a champion. And you did what you were expected to do. And you did what I and everybody else thought you should do. And you want to tell me that those fights weren't real? That you were carried? Well, I don't believe it. It doesn't matter what I believe, because you're the one that's got to carry that fear around inside you. Afraid that everybody's going to take things away. Afraid you're going to be remembered as a coward. That you're not a man anymore. Well, none of it's true. But it doesn't matter if I tell you. It doesn't matter, because you're the one that's got to settle it. Get rid of it. Because when all the smoke is cleared and everyone's through chanting your name, it's just going to be us. And you can't live like this. We can't live like this. Because it's going to bother you for the rest of your life. Look what it's doing to you now. Apollo thinks you can do it. So do I. But you gotta want to do it for the right reasons. Not for the guilt over Mickey. Not for the people. Not for the title. Not for money or me. But for you. Just you. Just you alone.
And if I lose?
And you lose. But at least you lose with no excuses. No fear. And I know you can live with that.
How'd you get so tough?
I live with a fighter.
A scene from Rocky III featuring my guest, Sylvester Stallone. What are the inherent difficulties in directing yourself in a film?
Fatigue, first of all. You may start out with all this enthusiasm and ambitions to try to carry out this dream that you have, this vision in your mind, but after a while the punches take their toll, the arguments, the catching colds, and just things like surface distractions, things that you wouldn't even count on bothering you, become really burdensome.
Mm-hmm.
And that was avoided by what we call a storyboard. And it's like a giant cartoon book, comic strip, where every shot is mapped out months in advance. So when this does happen, you have it all laid out. And you say, oh, let's go to page 34. Remember when my mind was fresh? Yes, we'll do that one. Instead of trying to invent ideas on the set, which usually is very time-consuming.
Mm-hmm. How would you characterize yourself as a director in terms of other actors? If someone comes to Talia Shire, for example, and says, I have a wonderful idea for this particular scene, how agreeable are you to change something, as you say, on the set that way?
Totally, totally. Sometimes I may not use the whole idea, but there's a section in it, a word, a spark, that will take it off in a whole different direction. And that's what's happened in several of the better scenes in Rocky. Just a side comment. Why don't we extend this a little bit longer, or why don't we throw an extra punch here and whatever, and then it leads to another scene. So I'm totally open to it. I think any kind of closed-mindedness brings a certain stiffness to the film, a certain regimentation, because film is being created on the spot, and it is, whether I like to admit it or not, it's many chefs making the cake. No man can make a film alone.
Mm-hmm.
No way.
I know there are many directors, though, who simply exclude their actors from any creative input, and I really don't see how that can be beneficial for the film.
That's not very self-serving. The actor is the most sensitive artisan on the set, and he really does have to pull the project off when all is said and done.
Mm-hmm.
The director has to be, of course, in control, and the writer's script has to be solid, but the actors are the most important, sensitive people, so I treat them like royalty. They never want for anything, because I know what it's like to feel rejected and put down and subjugated. So I try to make them feel as though they have as much say-so in the script as I do myself. And many times I'll let them alter scenes which are certain lines which I wouldn't normally do. I like the line just the way it is. But if I deny them this, they perhaps feel less, less association, less affinity with the material. So I just, okay, fine. Let them change.
Yeah.
It pretty much says the same thing. It's just sometimes I like to juxtaposition certain words or sentences. So, okay, so what?
One thing you touched on earlier was the difference in Rocky himself in this film, and this extends to the actual look of the movie. The movie has a, for want of a better phrase, a richer look, I suppose. And this is something I very much appreciate, and I assume you were conscious of trying to give it that kind of look.
Yes. Rocky 1 and Rocky 2 were literally butted together. There was no time passage. When Rocky 2 began, it was just 1 second after the ending of Rocky 1. So, but Rocky 2, there's a 3-year passage. Also, I was following in the footsteps of John Avildsen, who had directed Rocky 1, and I did not want to do a drastic departure from his directing style. So I kept it pretty simplistic. I guess that would be fair to say. John likes to be called simplistic, you know. And then in Rocky 3, I thought, I think that the style of the film should reflect the fast style of life in the kind of like upper echelon existence. So I used star filters, a lot of handheld action, and I guess more or less dramatic angles. I had some fun with it. But the most important thing was the contributions from my editors and the pacing. It's a much more economical film. I guess cinematically you might say I didn't smash home the dramatic point. I let the theme carry through. We know pretty much what the ending of Rocky is going to be. It's a foregone conclusion. So I don't have to drive home this theme. I mean the drama. The drama is there. Let's just get to the conclusion of it without, you know what I'm saying, me wringing my hands and crying. I mean, just me going like this is enough to say, okay, he's sad. We don't have to see him at the Wailing Wall.
Did Bill Butler photograph this one as well? Marvelous cinematographer.
Excellent.
Very
nice man, too.
I want to look at another clip from the film, and this one features a wrestler, I think you can tell us something about.
This is my ode to going one charity too far. You can extend yourself to many organizations, which is really wonderful, but sometimes you agree to do something without really knowing who you're getting involved with. So what starts out as a very plain and simple wrestling, a match between the world heavyweight wrestling champion and the world's boxing champion, which is supposed to be fake, you know, for fun, for the brownies and the bluebirds and the Boy Scouts and children in the audience with balloons. The man steps in the ring, his name is Thunderlips, decides once and for all to use this as a forum to prove that he is the toughest human being in the world at my expense.
Let's take a look at that right now. Here's another scene from Rocky 3.
The slugger from Philadelphia.
You better shut up. I'll break him in half.
How much do you think he eats? About 202 pounds.
Weighing 202 pounds, the reigning heavyweight champion of the world, Rocky Balboa. Come to the center of the ring, please.
Okay, come on, Mick.
All right, you guys, you know this is for fun, so take it easy and give him a good show.
Listen, after the match, how about if we get a Polaroid together, okay?
You're in trouble, man. Now you got me mad. I'm gonna break him in half like this.
Seems like lately everybody wants to beat me up.
Remember, this is entertainment. It's fun and games. Stay away. Make faces. Move around the ring. Got it, kid. All right.
He is the ring.
Yes. Yeah, I get nervous every time he does that.
Whoa, you move pretty fast for a big guy, you know that? Listen, why don't we just move around a little bit, you know, like give him a good show. First I'll chase you and you chase me, okay? How's that? All right? Here you go. Is that okay? That hurt, all right? How's that? Okay? Not bad, huh?
A scene from Rocky 3. That is one charity too much.
Yes.
Agree.
As a matter of fact, in the end, sometimes charity really hurts, you know.
We've only got a minute or so left, and I wanted to ask you, since evidently you have a hit on your hands with Rocky 3, about your upcoming film, First Blood. Tell me something about that.
That film The title will probably be changed. It's from a novel of the same title, but I think it's a little misleading. It's a very, very important story about the homecoming of a Congressional Medal of Honor winner from Vietnam and his inability to fit back into society and all the guilt and being called baby killer and warmonger and all these names. So he kind of like wanders America. He's America's lost son. And he goes to visit his friend last friend who has died of Agent Orange. He was in Nam with him. And he goes into this quiet mood, just doesn't want to talk to anyone anymore. And he's picked up by this redneck sheriff. And he starts asking me questions, and the more he probes into my life, the more quiet I become, until finally he pushes me to the breaking point. And I break out of the police station, and I revert back to the warrior. And what it is I've removed all my dialogue, and they bring in all these specialists and the what do you call these, National Guard and the state troopers to track me down. There's hundreds of men, and they're all being repelled. And this incredible fighting machine that was sent out to destroy other countries now has been turned on, you might say, its own creators. And I think there's a very strong message in there, very, very strong. Plus, but it's set in an action genre. I know I'm not doing service by it, but it's a kind of film that is important, has a statement, yet is quite entertaining.
And is this your own film?
No, Ted Kotcheff directed it, and I just participated in the screenplay.
It sounds fascinating.
It really is.
We are out of time. I want to thank you very much for taking this time out and coming by. And as I said, I do think you have a hit on your hands with Rocky III. Is Rocky finished now, or?
Well, my trilogy is, I'd never say never to anything, because I always end up looking like a hypocrite if I go back on it. So if there were a Rocky continuation, it wouldn't be part of the trilogy, and it would only be by popular demand. And as of now, I have no story, really, worth mentioning.
Well, a year from now, we'll ask you the same question.
Okay.
Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. My thanks to all of you. Until next time, good night.